Jose Dynamite. Let's get your origin backstory.
Originally, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. Moved to Hawaii about 26, almost 27 years ago to go to college at Chaminade University. And my senior year, there was a talent showcase that was happening. And I just decided, you know what, I want to do stand-up comedy. This is my very first, I'd been watching comedy on Comedy Central, and I was really excited. I'm like, oh, I think I want to try this. And so that's when I first ever got in front of an audience and tried to do my own original material. Actually, I completed my own original material, but I did not get a lot of laughs. It was probably the complete opposite of what you would want to get. You know, I came in there talking about this conspiracy theory that the lady that was feeding the cats on the campus was also in cahoots with the cafeteria, and that wasn't chow fun you were eating, it was meow fun. And, you know, that was my yuck, yuck, yuck joke. And I had gone on immediately after someone that was playing an original song that they wrote and dedicated to a handful of students that had passed away in a car accident earlier that year. And so, you know, people are all in tears and everything about this emotional performance. And then I go up like, hey, you just ate cat. And so it did not go over very well for me. 2002, when Laugh Factory first came out to the islands, I went up on stage 3 more times. I was encouraged by a friend to go do that. And then 2 years later is when I say I actually started my stand-up career, because in 2004, that's when I went to an open mic and had the comedians come up to me and tell me about other mics in the area. And so I started going to different stages and places to perform almost every single night of the week, starting in May 2004. So that's when I say 19 years ago is when I started doing comedy. I moved out here when I was 18 years old, so I'd never been to a comedy show before in my life. And the only comedy that I had been exposed to before that was Bill Cosby's cassettes and records when I was a kid. That's what that's what I listened to. And then when I was in college, there was a touring comedian that came out there. I have no idea who he was. And he did a show at our cafeteria at Chaminade. And that was the very first time that I ever saw like a live stand-up comedy performance. You know, you see things like, I think I can do this, you know?
Were you a performer in your family's household? Were you like the funny kid or the creative one where they would call on you?
One time when I was maybe about like 12 years old, my cousin Joe, he took me to the nursing home that his dad was staying in. And my cousin Joe is my mom's actual second cousin, so he was much older than me. And he took me to their nursing home to entertain the residents. And I did like a Bobby McFerrin lip sync thing. And then I had a little small magic kit, and I tried to do some tricks and stuff. So that was like the first memory of actually entertaining people. I did a play one time when I was in high school once, and I was just a background that really did nothing. I always considered myself more socially awkward than anything else. My brother and his friends used to tease me that I don't have social skills when I was younger. And so it kind of sort of translated to that. Growing up watching Saturday Night Live, kind of mimicking like Adam Sandler, Dana Carvey, and Mike Myers, you know, Wayne's World, and like reciting some of the jokes that I would see them doing the voice that they do. And I always kind of like had a love for that. I find that when I came out here to college, a lot of what would kind of sort of get me out of trouble with some people when they were like trying to start something with me was I would just kind of defuse the situation by, I would say something and try and just get a laugh, more self-deprecating than anything else. And usually people would like, okay, we're going to just leave him alone now. This guy's weird. And that's kind of, I guess, how it sort of started, or just the personality. And then, you know, eventually it took a while getting on stage before I realized my very first joke having a good, solid punchline. It's been a long journey. The biggest thing that I say about comedy is tragedy over time for a lot of people. And so a lot of times, especially when you get into like the very dark humor that some people do, is it's also very empowering for the comic to take something that's their own tragedy that they've experienced in their own life and then somehow flip it to where it is used to make an audience laugh and turn it into something that's positive, where they're actually owning their own narrative, their own story of, you know, the experience that they had. Everybody in life goes through something, but your attitude and how you approach it and deal with it is really kind of what sets you apart. And then of course, comedians, we find humor in everything. Sometimes at times when we shouldn't find humor, we will find humor, and that happens.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as a reaction where you almost didn't return to the stage, because you've been doing this for well over 10 years doing stand-up comedy?
For me personally, I can't remember a reaction that I got that ever was to the point where I considered quitting anything on stage. As far as silence, there are times in the, like, if you ever study like just speakers, keynote speakers, there are times when you actually want to get silence and you want to embrace that. So, like, there's a lot of comics that will, if the audience is not laughing, they just freeze up. One of the things that I was taught a long time ago, and this is from my buddy Chino LaForge over on Maui. He his very first tour, he met an old road comic that told him the beauty of the silence is you want to get the audience silent. You want to get them to the point in your story where you can hear a pin drop, because when you do that, that means you have them. And as soon as you get them, boom, then you hit them with that punchline. If it's a good punchline, you'll have them completely laughing, and like, you want that just to know that you have them right there is just really a great feeling.
What were, like, I guess early on, what you started with versus in 2023, what is more of your voice as a stand-up comedian?
So I did what a lot of people do. Usually when you start out, you're talking about your relationship, just very basic man versus women stuff. You will talk about bodily functions or, sex stuff, just because it's kind of a taboo subject for the most part, but there is like that awkwardness of whatever said action is. And, sometimes we'll explore telling that on stage because we know, like, hey, this is going to be something that is possibly relatable. It doesn't always come across as funny. Sometimes it comes across as hack. And then there were some topical jokes. I think at the time when I first started out, whatever that Jessica Simpson show was on MTV at the time, I don't even remember.
The Newlyweds?
It was her and Nick Lachey. So that was the show that I was kind of referencing at the time. As far as like some of the comics that I had seen live up to and before that point, aside from the gentleman that I saw over at the cafeteria in college, the next show that I actually watched live was in 2001. The girlfriend I had at the time, or maybe it was 2002, took me to go see Lanai and Augie over at when they were performing at Dole Cannery, sort of starting their thing. And then I remember asking her almost every other sentence of Augie talking, "What did he say? What did he say? I don't get that." And so after that, we went to Blockbuster. I'm dating myself. We went to Blockbuster and we went into Raps Hawaii. She's like, "You need to see Raps Hawaii. You need to see Rap Replinger." And so she introduced me to him and a lot more of the local comedy from that. And then from that point on, then I kind of learned, okay, who Andy Bumatai is, who Booga Booga were. And that really opened me up to some of the local comedy. And then after Laugh Factory came out here, you'd start seeing a little bit more. And then Sharky's Comedy Club opened up. And that's really the very first time that I got on stage was at Sharky's Comedy Club when they were at All Star Cafe over in Waikiki. And then with the job that we have working in radio. I approached Augie because I was working with him. He was at the time, and I said, "Hey, I'm starting to do comedy. Do you think I could come onto your stage and tell some jokes?" And he's like, "I'll give you 3 minutes of time. Come on Wednesday." And so I started showing up at Brew Moon on Wednesdays, and kept coming back, and he couldn't really get rid of me. That really kind of is what really propelled me and the comedy career, is the fact that I was working with Augie on the side through the radio station, but just asked him, "Hey, can I get stage time?" And then he would tell me, "Okay, you need to keep to this time limit on my set." And that was it. And then eventually I started going on tour with him, and he took me under his wing. And the first 9 years of my comedy career, I was his opening act, which was a blessing, and took me all over the West Coast, all the islands, Guam, Saipan, Alaska. It was awesome. 3 minutes, it can go by very quickly, or if you are doing so bad on stage, it can seem like eternity for an audience. And we've seen, and at the time, the reason he kept me at 3 minutes was because there ended up being like just a handful of up and coming comics, and that number of comics kept growing more and more. And eventually he's like, "Hey, there's too many guys that are coming in here. It was like, okay, everyone, 1 week is everyone has 2 minutes. If you go over by your time, you're done." A lot of the ones that were coming up at the time, so we had Sean Felipe, Stan Eggy, Kathy Tanaka, Elroy Ruiz, Timmy Matos. Champ was usually hosting the show, and then of course Lanai was the main feature, and then Augie was headlining. And occasionally there'd be some other comics that would come through from either the mainland or would pop up that like, "Hey, I want to try and get in front of an audience." I think Kaleo came a couple of times, and Andy Boomatai would maybe pop in once or twice here and there, and Frank DeLima. Yeah, it was a lot of fun starting out. But at the time, I was just really so fresh that there was another Mike over on base on the Navy base. So after there, we would just like, me and a handful of comics were like, "Okay, let's go get in the car and go so we can try and get stage time." Really that's the most valuable thing you can get, is as much stage time starting out as possible. And that's really a key that I tell a lot of young comics, is you can write as much jokes as possible, but until you get on stage and you figure out how you want to say it and the way that it comes out, if you're not getting up and talking, you're not doing the comedy yet.
You are offering ways to help people craft a joke, the setup. I mean, just, I don't want to say the basics, but it's just, I compare it to going to a golf course. You golf? You don't golf?
I don't golf.
Yeah.
But if I did go golf, I would go to somebody that knows what they're doing and have them try and teach me.
There's etiquette. Yeah. There's a certain way to move about.
Yeah. You need, like, you have to have, okay, all I know from Happy Gilmore is it's all in the hips. It's all in the hips. It's all in the hips. When ComedyU first started out, I started doing some workshops with a number of comedians started to grow, and I saw a lot of the dedication that they have, and I saw some of them that were like, "Okay, your material's okay, but you can tighten it. Let's see what we can do to tighten your material up." And so I started doing some of those workshops where we'd collaborate with several other comics, and they'd come and we'd spend like an hour before the show, and it was a way for them to kind of get up on stage, practice their material, and then get some feedback and have other comics like offer some feedback. And there was no audience there, so it's like it's really just a practicing routine. And eventually I worked with Manoa Valley Theater. This last year, I've done 3 different comedy workshop sessions and seen a lot of comics come through. A lot of very talented people. I have one lady, Nan Cardoso, who took the course, and since then she's really just been super dedicated, getting on stage all the time. This April, she's going to be at my next ladies' night show that I have happening over at Luna, Hawaii. And it's something that's, I think, is really good to be able to offer this, because there are some people that want to learn about joke structure. They want to learn different techniques that you can do that. And when you get on stage, you want to be funny. and to put an investment in yourself to, okay, how can I tighten up my material and make it funnier? It's really invaluable to a lot of people, I think. And just because I've seen so much and I try and study it probably more than I should. I feel like I kind of owe it to them. Like if I think of tags, I offer it all the time. Like, a tag is just like, here's the punchline for your joke. You can do this. But if you rearrange this joke, put this one in front of this one, it'll have a better flow because this joke, this punchline gets more laughs than this one. So you want to do this one later on so that you're building laugh, 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 big peak, boom, end of show, standing applause. Yeah.
You've been an opener for national touring acts. This year you are touring neighbor islands, supporting Tumua Tuine.
They're learning about him if they haven't already. And yeah, I mean, obviously if you've been under a rock, you do not know about his career. He actually started out about 6 years ago. And he was one of those young comics that came to ComedyU and got his start on our stage. And the very first time that I saw him on stage, I was like, oh my God, this guy's good. And after he got off stage, I told him, I said, I want you to come to O'Toole's on Friday. I want you to do the exact same jokes, the exact same 3-minute bit you did, and open up for my show. And this is immediately, I just saw like something amazing in him. And then he would come with his joke book. He was coming to all of the workshops and working on really developing his material and expanding, and has been a very disciplined, that's the thing that people don't realize is in order to be great, you really have to discipline yourself to always be writing, always be working on stuff, always be developing and refining your material. And he's also has a great support system in his family that are really encouraging him to do what he does. And the fans love him. I mean, he sold out the Blaisdell Arena last year in November. And so now we just, I did 2 sold out shows at the Maui Arts Castle Theater. We did 5 sold out shows at the Palace Theater. We have 2 shows coming up on Kauai, and then on April 22nd, 2 shows at the Hawaii Theater where he's going to be doing a special filming. And then he has shows that's coming up he's setting up shows across the mainland. Yeah.
Well, what is it about Hawaii that and the stand-up culture that really kind of resonates with you?
Well, you hit it on the nose right there. And this is something I used to say a lot: when the tides rise, all boats rise. And I've talked to other promoters, comedy promoters as well, and we have to kind of encourage ourselves that, hey, we might have a show on the same night. We are not competing with each other. We are competing with Netflix. We are competing with people going to the movies. We're competing with people going to watch a musician play. You look at the calendar, event calendar of what's happening. You'll see like 20 different musicians playing at different restaurants and places throughout the night, maybe one comedy show. And I've always thought, why is there only one comedy show? And we're a bastardized form of entertainment. And this is the thing, the biggest difference between music and comedy is if I go into a place and I start doing the best of Eddie Murphy, I'm going to get booed off stage. We cannot take anybody else's material and present it as our own. That's just the biggest taboo. And so you come into a situation where you are walking on a tightrope and you do not know what way you're going to go. And sometimes your material, you can walk a fine line where you could just like take it up to the edge and yank the audience back. And I've seen times where people just take the audience to the edge and they push it off and everybody else is like, what just happened? And like, this guy just ruined it for you guys. One of the things that you had asked me, like getting introduced to local comedy, is that I live here now. I've been living in Hawaii longer than I haven't been living in Hawaii. And this is home, and it's good for me to know what the roots are. And I love that this is such a multicultural place. And if you can make people laugh here, you can make them laugh anywhere, because you're seeing all different cultures. And that's really, I think, the beauty of this. And that's why it was important for me to know, like, okay, I learned a lot about the comics that came before me, like Mel Kabang, Frank DeLima, Ed Kahea, Booga Booga, Dave Lancaster, all of Bo Irvine, all of those guys, and then people like Kaleo that's come along, who came up just a little bit before I was in the scene. Kermit Apio, who moved away, but he still has his ties. There's actually a lot of comics that have their roots started here in Hawaii, but then moved away and grew in other states and other scenes. But Hawaii is still part of their home, and it's part of their identity. And everybody loves Hawaii. This is the place where everybody wants to come and visit. In a way, we're really blessed. Like when Joe Coy filmed his special and presented Hawaii to the world, you go look at the Blue Note calendar, their lineup is filled with the Blue Note comedy series with comedians that are coming to town, big name comedians, and a lot of up and coming name comics. And Hawaii is definitely on the map as a hotbed, and you have scenes that have popped up in Kona. There's always been a good scene over on Maui, very tight knit scene. Kauai needs some work, but the Big Island of Maui and Oahu are really thriving places over here. Jim Gaffigan, I mean, he just came out again. I did a show with him over on Maui, and post-pandemic in 2021, he kicked off his tour here in Hawaii. He did Maui, Kauai, and then Oahu. A lot of comics that have said, yeah, Hawaii is now a must-perform place, and I'm really happy that that's where we are, where people recognize that we've got a good, there's always a good crowd here for the comedy shows.